For today's Monday makeup lesson, I'm going to show you how to create this eye makeup look and share some of my favorite tips and tricks. If you're new to the Makeup Chair channel and enjoy makeup tutorials, please consider subscribing by clicking the subscribe button below and turn on the bell so you don't miss any notifications. And if you're already subscribed, then thank you and welcome back. Now let's get started. Let's start by refreshing our knowledge of the parts of the eye. So we have the lid, which I think we all kind of know, the crease area, which is where the eyelid creases into the eye shape. But in terms of makeup application, it actually refers to anything from this point upwards, but just stopping at the brow bone area. And the brow bone area is just a thin gap right underneath the brows, usually right underneath the arch of the brows in particular. Now with all that said, let's move on to prepping the eyelid. Now I like to start off by applying an eyeshadow primer all over the lid. This is going to give our eyeshadows something to hold on to so that they last longer for us. It's also slightly tinted, the eyeshadow primer I'm using, so it's going to create a blank canvas for us to work on because it disguises any natural discoloration that you might have on your lid. Now of course you can use concealer on your lids, but you might find that your eyeshadows don't last as long, they can kind of crease, and then it kind of undoes all the work that you did. So you're actually better off using an eyeshadow primer because it does a lot of the work for you and it's just going to make it so much easier to apply and it's going to last and look beautiful all day. And I'll link some of my favorite in the description box. Now, speaking of eyeshadow primer, I actually wanted to show you this kind of before and after in a kind of a way. And I wanted to show you this for two reasons. One, because I wanted to show you how I test out eyeshadows to see what combinations are going to work. And two, I also thought it was a great example of how eyeshadows can look if you don't apply the right base underneath. So on one side, I have taken my time, I've applied the eyeshadows and built them up slowly. And then on the other side, I haven't prepped. I've used my fingertips and I kind of just smudged them all on there very quickly. It takes me about 10 seconds. But this is how I kind of see what color combinations are going to work and how the end result is going to be and how the eyeshadows are going to blend with each other just by kind of almost swatching it in a way on my eyelid very, very quickly. I did add a little bit of green, which I'll show you at the end. But I just wanted to show you how taking your time can make a big difference. So to create this look, I ended up only using 3 eyeshadows, which is one of the reasons I like to kind of test it out first. I like to see how few eyeshadows I can use in order to create a look. So for this, I used 2 eyeshadows from a basic palette and then 1 from a kind of fun palette to add some kind of texture. So I always have my basic eyeshadows. I have my highlighter shade, which is about 1 shade lighter than my skin tone. I have my fade shade, which is usually like a kind of a blushy tone, usually matte, that I love kind of adding that extra blend with. And then I also have my mid tone, which I use all the time. It's 1 shade darker than your skin tone. And then I have my contour, which is at least 1 shade darker than my mid tone to add some depth. So for this look, I would usually use my mid tone. I use my mid tone all the time. It's kind of referred to as a transition shade or like a crease color. And it's basically there to add that kind of shape. But for this one, I actually decided to swap out the mid-tone for my fade shade. So I'm going to use my fade shade as my transition shade or my crease shade. And I'm going to pair that then with a contour shade. Now your contour shade should be at least 1 shade darker than your skin tone. This is going to add that nice depth to the look and also then work really well with the fade shade to create a beautiful blend. So those are 2 for my basic palette. And then the other eyeshadow that I used was this beautiful kind of pumpkin spice look. It's an absolutely beautiful eyeshadow. And I wanted to pair that with some neutrals in order to make it a little bit more wearable. So I have my fade shade, my contour, and my bonus. So only 3 eyeshadows. They're the only 3 that you need. So I've already prepped the lid, obviously with eyeshadow primer. However, I also want to add an extra step of prepping the lid with a kind of a darker base. And the best way to do this, I find, is to use a black pencil. So a black pencil liner. I find that this makes a great base. Unlike a lot of darker bases, I find pencils are just easier to smudge. They are dry without being too drying, and eyeshadows sit really nicely on top of them. So I'm going to take this and line right by the lashes. So really close to the lashes. And you want to almost coat the lower third of the lid. So imagine splitting your lid into thirds and then just using the lower third and completely covering that in the black. Now don't apply this too high because we are going to be smudging it. And so when we smudge it, it's going to kind of lift it up higher. So it's always better to keep it quite low. And you should end up with something that looks like this. And then what we can do is we can take our ring finger and kind of smudge this in. Now, what I don't want you to do is kind of do any rubbing motions or like scrubbing motions on the lid. What I want you to do is to use a kind of press and push motion. And then you should end up with something that looks like this. Now, if you're ending up with something that looks like the one on the left and you have like a little gap, you can always apply a little bit of like liquid liner or gel liner just to that area, because that little band can be really hard to get the pencil to hold on to. So I find just applying like a liquid or a gel liner to just there when you're done can definitely help create a much more deeper look at the lash line, which is what we're really trying to do. The next step then is to take our contour shade, and we're going to take a small pencil brush. And they call these pencil brushes because they're, I guess, in the shape of a pencil, but basically they're going to give us a lot of control because they're nice and short, but they're also going to kind of smudge and blend because there's a little bit of movement to the tip of the brush. And you want to apply the contour above and on top of the black, but try not to get it too close to the lash line. You kind of want to keep that depth there. So just imagine kind of hitting over the top of the black and then right around the edges, remembering not to bring it up too high. You never want your contour up too high. You want to keep it to the lid. So just start to kind of smudge and blend, covering about the halfway point of the lid, and then slowly bring it up a little higher. Our next step then is to take our fade shade onto a blending brush. So you want to take a blending brush that you're quite comfortable with using, and you want to go above again. So we have the dark base, then the contour, and then slightly above that is where we're going to apply this fade shade. And I'm almost applying it over the lid as well. And again, very slowly building this up. Don't apply too much. Ignore the crease for now. Just keep it kind of on the lid and work on the lid to begin with, and just apply a very small amount as you go. You can then slowly start to bring it up into the crease area, but it needs to be a very gradual thing with the eyeshadow. So just pick up a little bit as you go and start to then work your way upwards, blending it into the crease line, blending it up towards the brows. But as always, remembering to leave a small gap underneath the brows because we still want to keep that area nice and bright. Now it should all start to come together and you should end up with something that looks like this. If you need to go back in and apply a bit more of the black or a little bit of the contour, that's fine, but you should end up with something that is getting towards this point, remembering to leave a little gap under the brows. And if you want to, you can apply a little bit of highlighter there. It's totally up to you, but I'm keeping it quite simple. Once you get that nice soft blend, you can then take your spicy kind of color or whatever shade that you want to, and just apply this on the center point and then blending it towards the inner corner. And you can always go over with your brush to kind of soften out any harsh lines, and you should end up with something that looks like this. I then repeated the same process underneath using the pencil brush. So I applied a little bit of black, a little bit of the contour, a little bit of the fade shade, and then a little bit of that spice. Now I also applied a little bit of black liner on the waterline. This is optional, but it definitely creates more of a smoky effect. And that's that finished look. However, you can always go in and apply something else. I'm going to apply a little bit of that green because I just loved the way the green and the spice color worked together. I just applied this on the center point of the lid and then just tapped it kind of around to kind of blend it out. Now a little goes a long way, but it definitely adds something a little extra to the makeup look. And I'd love to know which one you prefer, whether you prefer it just with the spice color or whether you prefer it with a little bit of that green. I think I like the green better. And I don't usually wear green, but I like it. And that is the finished look. I hope that you enjoyed this one. If you did, then please hit the like button below. I'd really appreciate it. It helps me to better understand the type of videos that you'd like to see more of. You can also feel free to ask me any questions. I am here to help and happy to do so. And if you have any recommendations or requests, definitely leave them in the comments as well. If you'd like to continue watching, you can click some of the videos on the screen now that hopefully YouTube is suggesting for you. Thank you for watching. Be kind to yourself, and I will see you in the next one.